Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. This is the April 2021 card kit. Canada Post took its time delivering things, but it's finally here. So let's check out the kit and see what we've got. This is the Friendly Flowers card kit. Just like the other monthly kits, you can buy just the kit. You can do the subscription. I linked the info on that, or you can get a lot of the elements separately, whatever floats your boat. I linked all of it. So we have the candy for one. Ooh, banana. I always save those for later. So first off, the stamp set, which of course is right up my alley. Large 6x8 stamp set. So this is the Friendly Flowers stamp set. Nice big floral images, individual flowers. I love this little butterfly. A lot of really nice sentiments. I love that. I love like scripty sentiments and then ones I can use on the inside, etc. There is a coordinating wafer die set already available for this. I will link to it. It's separate. It's like the big wafer die sets. So yeah, but that's the stamp set. So you get the stamp set. There is all of this gorgeous pattern paper. It's the Simple Stories, Simple Vintage Cottage Fields pattern paper. And it's just, it's another one of those ones, like there's so many, like one like this, it would be perfect. Just put it in a frame, you know? And that's it. Just stick it in a frame. It's so pretty. So they're all double-sided. This is 6x8 pattern paper. Love. Yeah, see? Like, I've said this before with other kits. I was like, I need to get my hands on like just a few little frames. You could totally do kind of like a collage, you know? Yeah, it would be so pretty. Yeah, there's that one and that one. Yeah, these are really pretty. Ugh. 100% would totally, you could just do like four with frames, you know? Those would look really nice. But anyhow, they're beautiful papers. So you get those. Oh, there's also stickers. You get 3 sheets of stickers that coordinate with like those papers, everything. These are really pretty. These are really pretty. I like the sentiments. I like those sentiments a lot. I just, cause like the colors and a little bit of pattern and stuff, those are really pretty. Love it. So you get those. You get a jar of Simon's cream embossing powder. I have become quite a fan of this when they released it. This was, I forget when they first released it. So this is like my second jar, and I actually ordered a couple more. This, I've been using it enough that it's gonna get its own little, you know, Systema container like I use. I like the cream because I like to use a lot of watercolor papers, and you know, most of them aren't white. So I like the cream embossing powder. It makes things just, it's just a little bit more of a subtle look in my opinion. So I'm kind of excited about that. I was like, yay, more embossing powder. So you get that. You get 3 of Simon's pre-scored cream note cards. Matchy matchy, love it. I like their pre-scored note cards. So you get those. You get this package of Tim Holtz Idea-ology mini FLAIR. These are little buttons. So if you like to do like 3D stuff, they're just little embellishments and that. They're just pretty. Like this one says luck. They're just pretty. So you get that. You get a yard of ribbon. This is the warm velvet trims, also from like the Tim Holtz Idea-ology line. You get a quote band. So mine says, remember to keep some room in your heart for the unimaginable. And that will work with this. My dog is losing his mind downstairs, just FYI. So you can thread that through and attach it to a card, people that do like mixed media and that sort of stuff and decor, like some of these elements would be so nice for that. So you get that. And then you get Simon cardstock and envelopes. So you get Simon's Peacock cardstock, one of my favorites, cream, cotton candy, slate. I love the color combos. You get some envelopes. So we got some shimmery cotton candy, a slate envelope, a cream envelope. Everything's all matchy-matchy. So that is the kit in a nutshell. As always, like I said, I'll have all the links, etc. And then stay tuned. I will have a card coming right after this showing what I make with this stuff. Alrighty, so of course, I used the large floral image from the set. So I pulled out some Canson XL watercolor paper from my stash and my MISTI. Put the watercolor paper in my MISTI, got out the large stamp from the set, and somewhat put it off to the side. I wasn't sure when I first started whether or not I would cut this out or, you know, leave it. Just gave myself a little bit of leeway. I used my anti-static powder tool, and then I inked up the stamp with Simon's clear embossing ink. And I'm going to stamp this twice because watercolor paper has some texture to it, and a stamp like this has a lot of detail. So, and you can't tell. Sometimes on like smoother cardstocks, you can see where you've stamped, whether or not you missed anything. On watercolor paper, it's really hard to see. So I'd rather just be safe than sorry. Stamp it a couple times. And then I'm going to coat this with that cream embossing powder. And like I said during the unboxing, I'm really liking this embossing powder with watercolor paper. I've done a ton of videos showing just doing white heat embossing, you know, watercolor paper, and that's fine. Either or, whatever floats your boat. But I'm just finding it interesting how the colors match so well. Like you'll see as I melt this embossing powder, it almost disappears. Like I legit had a hard time seeing it when I was watercoloring, and that's why you'll see me kind of hold it up a little bit. So I melted this with my heat tool, and like just the color match between that and the watercolor paper was kind of perfect. So I made sure it was all smooth and melted. Watching it on the video, you can actually see perfectly exactly where it's all melted. And then after I had it melted, I should have, well, coulda, shoulda, woulda. I should have taped this down because of the way I ended up having to hold it, but in the end, it doesn't really matter. Like it didn't warp a ton. I didn't use a ton of water. For the actual watercoloring, I am using Distress Oxide sprays. If you've been watching any of my recent videos, you know I'm kind of sort of obsessed with my Oxide sprays. However, I've done videos way back when I first started dabbling with the Oxide sprays, you know, first started buying the bundles. I did videos watercoloring with them. That was kind of my first, you know, dipping my toe in the water of using them because sprays very much intimidated me. And this is a really easy way to use them. Could you just use your ink pads? 100%. Smush your ink pads, watercolor with them. I've shown that in a bunch of videos as well. The only difference between the sprays and using your ink pads though is the sprays are more intense. The color is more intense. So to each their own though. If you have the ink pads and the reinkers, you could use a little drop of the reinkers and watercolor with that. The reinkers do have a bit more resins in them than the sprays. The sprays are obviously more liquid. They're different products, but similar. So I'm just saying. But again, you guys know me, and I have to have all the colors in all the mediums. So yeah, I don't know. I really like the sprays. They're fun, and I'm getting a lot of use out of them, so win-win in my book. But anywho, the watercoloring was very simple. Because of the raised embossed edges, I don't really have to worry too much about, you know, letting one area dry like you do with the no line and that sort of a thing. And then I kept the color palette fairly simple. I went with colors similar to the pattern papers. I will have the specific colors of the sprays listed in the supplies. It was spun sugar, worn lipstick, mustard seed, peacock feathers, cracked pistachio, and then I brought in some rustic wilderness, which is life. That green is just, I was so glad I pulled that out. So I had just shaken up the sprays, applied a bit to my palette. When you work with oxides specifically, they will start to separate because that's just the nature of the product. But I just swirl it with my paintbrush, or you could use a little water brush and paint with them. And they'll sometimes do their own little thing. In some of the other videos I've done, the, you know, the different oxides just have a mind of their own, which is half the fun. So after I had watercolored all of this, I, of course, quickly dried it, and then I used some Ranger Perfect Pearl powder mixed with water and splattered that heavily all over everything. And then I also grabbed a little bit of white gouache and mixed that in with it as well and splattered that all over everything. Let this completely dry, and then I did cut this out. If I had had the coordinating wafer die, I would have used that. Would have been easier. It would have made it, you know, a little nicer. I prefer the wafer dies, but since I don't have them, I just quickly cut it out. And then I grabbed a piece of vellum just from my stash, and I'm stamping this little butterfly from that set because I love this butterfly image. It's so pretty. So I'm stamping it onto the vellum with that same clear embossing ink. I used my anti-static powder tool on this as well. I was going to heat emboss this with the cream embossing powder because I think that would have looked really pretty too, but I couldn't resist using gold embossing powder for this. Just the detail on this butterfly is just love. So when heat embossing on vellum, even though I've sped this up in editing, embossing powder melts on vellum extremely quickly. So be very mindful of that. The minute it's melted, take your heat tool away. Vellum will burn very easily. You can also just completely overheat it and it will, like, vellum will, like, it won't even be quite burnt yet, but it'll almost like dry out and crackle. So just, if you have never heat embossed on vellum, or if you have troubles or keep having issues, you just melt it quickly and then immediately pull your heat tool away and you're good to go. So I cut out those butterflies, and then I grabbed some of the pattern papers from the kit. I trimmed down one of the papers along with some of the pink cardstock, and then I cut a couple of strips of the papers as well, and then pulled out a sentiment from the set that I was originally going to use on the front of the card, but then decided to use one of those little sentiment stickers. And then I also roughed up the edges of this pattern paper just using my fingernail. This was like what we used to do back in the day when making cards. Like, this was one of the few ways to add like texture. Before we had wafer dyes or any of that stuff, it was like rough up all the edges of every layer of cardstock. That was just what you did. Anyway, roughed up the edges a little bit just to give it that little extra something. And then I adhered those two little strips of pattern paper. And then this is when I decided to go with one of the little sentiment stickers from this sheet, which I couldn't stop staring at. I was like, I like it so much. But anyway, just chose to go with one. They are stickers, so I could just stick it on, but I decided to put some little thin 3D foam squares behind it just to give it a little dimension. And I'm going to do the same thing with this large floral cluster as well, just to pop it up a tiny little bit. And I'm going to stick that onto my card front. The butterflies I'm going to adhere with craft tacky glue, and I'm only going to put adhesive right behind the body because, one, that's where the heat embossing is, so you won't see any glue through the open areas of the vellum. But also when it comes to like butterflies and dragonflies and that sort of thing, I like to put adhesive just behind the body and let the wings pop up a little bit. So I did that. And then my card base is one of the pre-scored cream note cards from the kit, and I decided to adhere this one bit of pattern paper on the inside. I liked it. I was going to adhere it on like the right side of the inside, but I decided to adhere it on the other so that there's space. You know what I mean? Like there's space where I put the sentiment to write something. So just a little extra something. And then I adhered that third little butterfly to the inside as well. And then I adhered the card front to the card base. You could always stop here, but I'm going to pull out a bit of bling from my stash because, of course. So I have some gold crystals in my stash, so I pulled out those just to tie in with the gold butterflies and sprinkled those kind of throughout the card here. And then once I was happy with that, I'm just going to adhere these into place with dabs of craft tacky glue. And then after I get all of these crystals adhered onto the card front, I'm going to pair this card with that metallic cotton candy envelope that came in the kit. And that's going to finish off this card. So it's got the shimmer and the splatter and the gold and the vellum butterflies, and it just makes me happy. So like I mentioned earlier, I will have a link to the kit, to the subscription, to everything separately, etc., etc. That will all be in the description box below the video, as well as a link to my blog post. And in my blog post, I'll have picture links to all the supplies. So you can check that out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching, for subscribing, thumbs upping, commenting, all of it. I very much appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye!